Alrighty kids, let's see what we got here now. The next thing that we're going to do is talk about starting to lay out and cut out and glue up our neck blanks. And to understand this, we're going to talk a little bit about scale length. Scale length is the distance from the nut to the saddle. That's your scale length. And the scale length can sit on the guitar at different points. And I've got something set up here where I'll show you that. And the way we're going to glue up our necks are we're going to take 3 pieces, and I think you can probably see this. There's 1 board, 2 boards, 3 boards. And at this end, we're going to see that our center board comes out to form a tenon. And our neck block, which this is a rough, but the neck block, so now your sides are going to come in and be glued to here and go out and form your body. But then there's your mortise. So you've got your tenon and your mortise all ready to go. And so when this goes together like so, then that's your neck joint. So we're building our mortise and tenon joint in, and this is going to be bolt on neck. So there'll be 2 bolts here through the sound hole. You'll have access to those. So that's going to be your mortise and tenon, and that's going to be the way we're going to construct this. This is I really like this method because I'm using the same wood thickness for my tenon and my mortise as I glue up this block. You can see the block has 1, 2, 3 pieces that are glued together, and I'm going to explain this in more detail here. But I'm going to build it so that the centerpiece on my neck is the exact thickness or width of my mortise there. So my mortise and tenon are constructed at the same time, made out of the same material. I always cut my block out of the same stuff I'm cutting my neck out of because it's going to be the same thickness. So there you go, our mortise and tenon. So this is our neck block. We're going to need an end block, but that's different. And so there's our neck block, and this is how we're going to construct our neck with a tenon built into it. Now I have made my own templates for my neck, and you should do the same. And this is where we're going to get into the discussion about scale length, so that you start to get a better idea of how this is done. But I want you to notice that there's a little indentation here. I hope you can, I don't know if you can see that very well. There you go, little indentation there. And then I've got a V cut out here for my pencil to fit down in. So this piece from here represents how long I need to cut my center board for my 3-piece neck that's getting glued up. And then so that then is my tenon. But on this one, for my 2 outside pieces, I cut at the notch, and this angle is about 1.5 degrees here. And so I scribed my pencil line and I cut that at about 1.5 degrees, and that's not perfect at this time, and I'm going to show you how I clean that up. But when you're laying out your template, you want a notch and you want 1.5 degrees, and then this is about 3/4 of an inch. It could be a little less to fit into your mortise, and that's going to be the tenon. So this one piece here allows me to this template allows me to cut out the 3 pieces that I need for my neck, the 2 outside pieces and the piece with the tenon in the middle. Now the headstock, this is longer than it needs to be, but I like to have a little extra. But this angle right here is generally about 14 degrees. So if you went to the internet and look this up, you're going to see that that's about a 14-degree slope on the way the headstock tilts back. So I've got that built into my template. I've got this is not an issue because this all gets carved away, but you know, you want to leave it, you know, just make it look like what it might look like. Okay, I want to do a couple little clarifications here. One is, let's start with, I didn't tell you what this, how far down this heel should go, and that should be 3 3/4 of an inch there. You know, that's going to be plenty. You're going to actually come back and cut quite a bit of this off, but call it 3 3/4 of an inch for the depth of that heel. Also, I didn't tell you how long this should be, and that from where your angle starts down, make that about 8 inches. And again, that's going to be plenty long. You'll cut off some of that, but that's a good safe length. So give yourself 8 inches here. Give yourself 3 3/4 of an inch here, and then again from your notch to where your angle starts, that's determined by the scale length and the number of frets you want to the body. This part is about 3/4 of an inch. That's all you need. Once your fingerboard's glued onto that, that's plenty. You're going to carve away a lot of that when you're carving your neck. So there's the template. Now, I have 3 different ones that I use depending on how many frets I want to the body. Now this is where we're going to talk about scale length, but these are all the same. That angle's the same on the headstock. The amount of, so the angle's the same there. The amount of the tenon's the same. The notch is the same. The only thing that's different is the length from where the headstock begins its slope to where the notch is, which is going to be my number of frets to the body. So in this case, this is a 14 fret to the body. So this part is longer than the one that's 12 frets to the body, which is this guy right here. So the one that's 12 frets to the body, if I line up where it's at the body, you'll see that where the nut's going to land and the angle of my headstock is going to be different. So I've got 3 of these, one for the 3 common things I do. You may not need that. You may always want to have a 14 fret to the body neck, maybe your preference. Or 12 fret is 12 and 14 frets are the most common. I don't like common things, I like odd things, so I love my 13 frets to the body neck, especially on these little Nick Lucas guitars. I just like that it's different. It's not uncommon. It's not common, but it's not uncommon. Gibson, if you look back in the day when they were making Nick Lucas's, you'll find examples of those with 13 frets to the body. So 12 frets to the body, 13 frets to the body, 14 frets to the body. And then the scale length is the other thing that we got to talk about, and I'm going to try and make this be clear. Because when you're making those templates, you have to know if it's for and we're going to talk about 2 common scale lengths here. We're not going to get into anything esoteric, but the 2 most common scale lengths are 25/4. We're going to call it. Other people call it different numbers, different fractions, but we're going to call it 25/4. And the other common one, the shorter scale, is 24/9. 24.9 inches, and that's inches, and that represents from the nut to the saddle, 24.9 inches or 25.4 inches. One thing that I've gotten, I don't know if these are still available, but this is a fret ruler, so it has the fret placements. All these marks are where frets fall. For 4 common scale lengths, the 2 common steel string, and then there's 2 common nylon string fret scale lengths on this one ruler. This is an Ibex. I think that was Sloan's company, Irving Sloan. But I assume you can still find these things. It's really handy because it shows you right where your frets are going to fall, and then down here where the saddle's going to fall. And again, that shows with the compensation that we'll talk more about. But anyway, a fret ruler. Now, if you can't find a fret ruler, the next best thing is to and we haven't talked about this yet, but I'm going to tell you to order from LMI a fingerboard that is pre-radiused and pre-slotted. And it's going to look something like this when you get it. Now, I know I told you in the introduction we're going to do all this from the ground up, but this is the one thing, it's silly not to buy it. It's perfect because they're set up to do these perfectly. So your fret slots are all right where they're supposed to be, and it has a radius on the top, which is the 16-inch radius, and then it's straight from front to back. So in other words, all of those things make this particular piece be a little bit tricky to do, and it's like, I don't know, they charge you $12 to slot it and $12 to radius it. So it's not worth the headache, the hassle, the potential to screw it up. Just buy your fingerboard pre-radius, pre-slotted for one of those two scale lengths, 25/4 or the 24/9. The 24/9 being a little bit shorter scale length. So on a smaller guitar you would use that. If you're doing a dreadnought or you know, some of the bigger guitars, certainly get the 25/4 scale length. But once you order this, it's not, it doesn't have the taper on it. In other words, you're going to cut the width at the nut that you want, and you're going to put the proper taper on it. It's just a board, but it is radiused and it is slotted, and I highly recommend buying that. You can go online and find a million templates of how to lay it out and cut it yourself. It's not worth it. It's not worth your time and effort. This is a no-brainer. What I started to say earlier, if you cannot find the fret ruler, you can use your slotted fingerboard for the same thing. I always count my frets and mark them. You can see I've got a 12 and a 14 here, for example, of where that's going to hit the body. So if I'm hitting at the 12th fret or the 14th fret, then I'm just moving this up and down. But what I wanted to say about making the template is you can use this and this to add those two things together, find where your nut is, and this is going to go, this has a piece on it that gets cut off, but that first fret's where that first slot is where the nut's going to go. And then if this were, in this case, I picked up and I can see that my notch is right and my nut's right where I want it to be. So this, in this particular, without reading it, I could tell this was my template for my 12th fret neck. Had it been the 14th fret neck, like this, then it would have, and I put the 14th fret on that notch, and then we see that again this gets cut off, but that falls right where my angle starts. So that's my 14th fret. So again, this piece of this is longer, between the two scale lengths. So use your brain and figure out how to make these templates that look like this. Again, you're going to add a notch and a cutout here for your pencil mark where you're going to cut it, and then you're going to add your 3/4 of an inch roughly for your tenon that goes into your block. Again, here would be my block, this would be my tenon, that's going to go in there, and then you see that notch falls right at your where the bodies will be. Again, there'll be wood on there from the side, so on. But so this is your layout for your neck. I could give you a dimension here, but that doesn't help you. You need to understand that all this is the scale length from the nut to how many frets you want at the body to the saddle. So again, if it's a 14, 13, 12 fret, you figure out what that is, and you can, right at your nut, you're going to start your 14-degree angle here, and you're going to just lay this out. The notch is where the body is. Your two outside pieces are going to be where this cutout is here, and one piece, the middle piece, is going to have the tenon for your mortise and tenon. Mortise and tenon is just a joint. It's a female and a male. This is the male on that joint. So I hope that's somewhat understandable. So here's an example. The top of this blue line is my body. This is rough cut it out, obviously. And here it says 12 frets. So you can see, and using my fret ruler, I laid this out so that my saddle is falling in the right place and all this lines up. So I taped these two together here. So here's what I want you to understand. If I'm making this a 12 fret to the body, then this is where the bridge is going to land on the top of the guitar. If I were making it 13 frets to the body, which now I have my 13th fret right at my body, notice how the bridge came this way. So your scale length stays the same. If I made this a 14 fret to the body, again, there's my 14 frets to the body, but my saddle and my frets are all in relationship. That doesn't change. So 12 frets, see how that moves the bridge back onto the bulk of the body. Let's see if we can show that a little more. So it's sitting a little bit further. When it's 12 frets, it's sitting a little bit more in the center of the body, our air pump. 13 frets brings that up a little bit closer to the sound hole, a little bit more room behind the bridge for our air pump, and 14 frets is going to pull that bridge up even further. So the scale length stays the same, and it's just a relationship of how many frets you have clear of the body. So if this body were 5 times longer and 20 times wider, none of that matters. My scale length is what determines where my bridge is going to fit and how many frets I want to the body. So get your head around that concept. A lot of people get confused thinking about, well, if I move this, how do I move that? But think of these as being tied together. And again, there's 12 frets to the body, there's 14 frets to the body. You saw how this bridge moved up and back in relationship. So once you determine, so you want to determine your scale length. If it's a smaller guitar, you're probably going to go with 24/9. If it's a bigger guitar, you're going to go with 25/4. So determine your scale length, determine how many frets you want to the body, and then buy your radius fingerboard with the slots in it. Now, we're not going to, do not buy a slotted bridge. We're going to make our bridge and we're going to slot this after it's glued to the guitar so we know that our intonation is exactly right. So do not buy a slotted bridge. This is just an example I have here, because we're going to make this bridge and it's going to be perfect. By the way, this part gets cut off, so don't let any of this bother you where it's sitting over the sound hole. If I'm doing a 12 fret neck, then this is you buy this and it's usually 20 frets. You can have them add frets when you buy it, but in this case I wouldn't even want it hanging over my sound hole. If I was doing a 12 fret neck, I wouldn't want it hanging over my sound hole, so I would probably cut it here, and that would only leave me with actually 18 frets. So this is 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then there's no fret there because I'm going to cut that off there. But that doesn't bother me. I don't, I'm not building this for some hot player that's playing way up the neck. These are going to be just good utilitarian guitars. So this number doesn't bother me. If you have a reason that you want 20 or 22 frets, then that's going to change this equation. And here you can see at 14 frets to the body, I have room for another fret or 2 even. So this part all gets cut off and manipulated as to your relationship to your sound hole and how you want that to look. I like to let my rosette show, so I often cut my fingerboards back a ways so that I can see my rosette when I glue it down. So that's an aesthetic issue, and that's something to think about, but don't worry about this at this point in time. Okay, here's another little view, a cartoon I made. Let's see if this works. So here we are at the 12th fret, the 13th fret, the 14th fret. But then watch what happens to our bridge where it sits in the body. So we're going to change from a 12th fret to a 13th fret. Notice where the bridge sits. Now we're going to change to a 14 fret neck. Pulls the bridge up further. So I think that, this is a very cool illustration. This, to me, is just like on television, where they have little cartoons that show you how medicine works. I always love those, or stain removers. So this is a little cartoon. Shows you what happens when you pull the bridge, when you change your scale length. So there you go, animation. I'm doing sophisticated animation here to teach you guys how to build guitars. So your scale length stays the same from the nut to the saddle. It never changes. But where you attach it to the body, that's what will put your bridge at a different part of the body. Okay, so now that we have our templates made, I hope I explained that properly. 26 inches to here, that I can get 3 cutouts of my neck. So I'd have one there, one like that, and one like so. So there you can see I can get 3 pieces, and that's all I need are 3 pieces to build my neck. There's 1 neck, 2 necks, 3 necks out of this one board. And this board cost me about $32. Here's another one that's a little wider, because there's my 4 necks for my 4 guitars that we're working on. So this board was $20, so I got $50 in both these boards, and I've got all 4 necks out of them. Also, I showed you this on a wider board, so it could be shorter. Here's an example on a thinner board. This is probably considered a 1x6, but it's only 5.5 inches across. So you lay out your pieces depending on what size board you can get. In this case, then it needs to be about 33 inches long and 5.5 inches wide in this case. So that's how you lay out your template. And so where do you get wood like this? I go to eBay, go under lumber, and Google mahogany lumber or mahogany boards and see what they've got. Try always to get a 3/4 inch board. Don't get 7/8. That makes the neck be a little funky and the tenon a little funky. 3/4 inch is perfect, and that's what a lot of wood is. So if you can find a mahogany board, 3/4 inch, 5.5 inches. If you had a board that was only 4 inches wide, you could get 1 neck out of that. So you'd think in terms of, it could be a 4-inch wide board, but if it's this long, I can make that work. I can get my 3 pieces out of. So think about that. But again, go to eBay. You can find this. There's other, or Google on the whole internet. Lumber. Hardwood lumber specialists, something of that nature. There's a place called Gilmer Woods. There are others that will sell boards. You're not going to find this at your local big box store like Home Depot or Lowe's, that sort of thing. If they did have mahogany boards, they're probably glued up several pieces of mahogany in different lengths. And it's expensive, and that's not what you want for this. You want a solid piece. African mahogany is good. Honduran mahogany is good. Any of the mahoganies would be great. Sapelli would work fine. I'm lucky I get to go to my local hardwood store and pick it out by hand, and I like to find boards that are light of weight. I really like a lightweight guitar. I like a lightweight neck when I'm playing it. So if you have the opportunity to pick it out yourself, then consider weight a real factor in your board. Don't get a real heavy board. So there you go. Here's, by the way, then a neck that was made out of those 3 pieces. You can see a center piece and our 2 outside pieces. I don't know if you can, there's the tenon, and that's part of that center board. Looks kind of like that. Again, this is just roughed out at this point, and that's all just handwork to do that. There's the fingerboard glued on. The overlay on the headstock. Now I did have to add these ears here, which you do, and we'll do that later, that gives us the width we need to cut out our headstock on. That's what we're up to here, trying to build these 3 pieces to turn it into something that looks like that. Here's another one, got binding on the neck here. Okay, this is going to be a 14 fret neck out of this piece of mahogany that I'll get my 3 pieces out of. I'm going to start by putting my flat edge where the fingerboard would go against a flat side of the board. Usually when you get these from the supplier, there's a good straight edge on them. If not, you're going to need to make a straight edge, but these are fine. And again, I'm going to true these edges up later anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfectly straight here. But so now I'm going to mark this for my 14th fret. This is going to be the one with my tenon on it. So I'm just going to come right out to the end here. Hope you can see that. So I'm using all of this for my tenon. I don't know if you can see that, but there's the pencil marks for one of the 3 pieces I need. Now I can take and put this here and get a good amount of, without losing too much wood here. And now this one, and I find that I can make this turn on my small bandsaw just fine and cut through here. So now this one, I'm going to make this be my straight edge. Okay, so here I'm just going to my notch, and I'm going to take my pencil and put it on the inside, and this is, that line from my notch to there is roughly my 1.5 degrees off of this straight edge here. So there's my second piece. Now I got to get one more piece out of there. Now again, I've got a good straight edge here, so I'm going to use that. No sense not using good straight edges on this. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to put my notch. I'm going to put my inside where my line is for my 1.5 degrees. Then again, I'm not doing this because that's my tenon for my one long piece. 2 short ones, 1 long one. So there we go. So there's my notch, and there's my inside on my angle, just to make my mark. I hope you can see that. Same thing here. I've got my where my notch was and my angle, so I'm going to cut that out like so. Now I'm going to come back and straighten, really, once I get this glued, or well, before I glue it up, but once I make sure I got my edges all straight, then I'm going to cut these 2 short ones on my chop saw at the angle that I want to help get me in the ballpark. Ultimately, we're going to do a lot of chisel work here by hand at this joint. We're gonna be able to true this up to fit the guitar just right. I don't know if I've said this before, but what I want to tell you is we're not trying to act like we're in a production shop here. We're not trying to act like we got all these specialized tools, CNC machines, and all this other stuff that would allow all this stuff to fit together perfectly, i.e. the neck joint and all the angles and everything. What I want to teach you is how to build a guitar with hand tools or minimal power tools, and when we get to those critical points, like where the neck meets the body and where we put our bridge and all the kind of important parts, I want to show you how to do that so that when you get to that point, you can take your hand tools, your chisels, and you can true that thing up and get it to be right where you want it to be. In other words, it's not like we have to mill this stuff exactly right when we're doing this, because this process, what I'm trying to tell you is that when it comes to those parts where things may not fit perfectly, we're going to be able to make them fit exactly where we want them. And that's going to be done with handwork at the end. That's a different concept than having a CNC machine and carving all of your necks and everything by hand. So, and I suspect this is more of how the old guys used to do it. You know, we fantasize, we idealize that the old builders were, deep into the construction of these instruments and making them, make the wood sound just so, and getting all these things to happen. And I suspect that's not true. I suspect that most of those guys were probably new to this country. They were needing jobs to feed their kids. And so if they came from the old world and they had some woodworking experience, they probably went to Martin, and Martin said, yeah, you can go over there and sand those guitars all day for the next 30 years. And some guy probably did that, and he got his paycheck and he went home. Obviously, people knew how to put the guitars together and build them, but I suspect they weren't spending all day worrying about the things we talk about today on the internet. The tap tone. I doubt those guys ever tap toned a top in their lives on all those classic guitars that we put up on a pedestal. I doubt they flexed their tops. I suspect all they were trying to do were get their numbers, get the number that they needed to do to fill orders out of the factory. As I've seen older Martins through the years, there's a lot of evidence to support that idea. You can look at old Brazilian rosewood Martins, and you still see the saw cuts from the circular saw on the back of the woods when you look inside. They weren't fussing over all the little perfect details. Again, I don't like perfection. I don't want to talk about perfection. I want this to be something that you made with your hands. I want the hand of the builder to be apparent in the build. Now, I want it to be competent, but I don't want it to be perfect. I want somebody to look at it and say, wow, this is really nice. But we can all go through and point out the little defects. I've been in some high-end guitar building factories and see people at the end of the line touching up finish with super glue and doing all the little things necessary that I have to do in my little shop by myself to make it look good. Those are the tricks. Those are the things you're going to learn. You're going to know where all your mistakes are. I know where all my mistakes are. I haven't built a perfect guitar yet, and I don't care about that. But when I hand it to somebody and say, look at what I did, they're always impressed, and they're like, wow, this is cool. That's what we're going for. We're going for cool. Look at what I did. We're not going for perfection here. We're not going for something you're going to put up on a pedestal. That's for other people to worry about. So when I'm talking about cutting out these necks and these joints, I'm putting us in the ballpark so that when it comes time to actually fit this stuff together, I'm going to show you how to take your chisel, work it, how you think about it, and how you're going to make it fit. If it doesn't fit right, you've done all this work for nothing. So it's going to fit right, and it's going to look right. Don't worry about it too much, but kind of try and follow what I'm telling you here. And so what I'm saying is, on these neck joints, I want to do a cut that's about 1.5 degrees off of my fingerboard level edge. But if it's not, we can come back and we'll be able to straighten it out and fix it. But get as close as you can. But don't fuss over it. Don't worry about this. I'm going to show you in the end how to make all this stuff work together. Again, that's different than a factory where everything's cut and it fits together and there's no guesswork. We're not doing that here. And quite honestly, that's the hardest part of this, is knowing how to fit all these parts together once you've made them. I've had a number of customers through the years bring in kits that they bought. Kits are terrible. Nobody has written a book on how to put a kit together. Stu Mack, Martin, they sell you the kit, but you're on your own. You can't call them up and say, wait a minute, what does this mean? They don't care. All they've done is compiled all these parts together and given it to you. That's a kit. Maybe they've pre-bent the sides. Maybe they've done some of the rosettes or those sort of things. But you're on your own, and where everybody fails is that last step where you're putting the neck to the body and getting your neck set right, and so that it's playable, and so that the action's right with your, so you don't have a tall saddle, you don't have too short of a saddle, all those things. And that's what, when we get to that point in this build, I'm going to talk to you about how to fit all that stuff together. I'm digressed here a little bit, but I want that concept to sink in, that we're not going for perfection. We're not trying to do this as if we had a bunch of CNC machines. We're trying to do it more like what the old guys really, how they did it. They had small shops. Gibson, you'll see old Gibsons with 3-piece tops. Why did they do a 3-piece top? Because they had these pieces that were laying around. They were just fine, and then they would paint it black, and they used it, and maybe they'd sell it cheaper. But the reality was they were just trying to get stuff out the door, fill orders. They were trying to use up supplies. They were trying to make the most money from what they had available to them in their shop. So it's not beyond comprehension that they would use up old odd pieces of wood. Hey boss, I can glue these 3 pieces together and make a top out of it. It'll be just fine. Matter of fact, that's what Martin did when they developed the D35. It's a 3-piece back, and everybody thinks, oh, that has its own sound. Well, Martin was just trying to use up wood they had laying around. They had all these small pieces they couldn't use. They couldn't get a 2-piece back out of, so they made a 3-piece back. That's common sense. That's what, if you're a small builder, you're going to be doing. I'm always trying to find the perfect little piece of wood laying around the shop that I can put in where I need to do something with. Okay, enough of that. But anyway, I've got my 3 pieces laid out here now, and I'm going to go saw these on my little bandsaw, and I'll show you some of that. Okay, I'm going to saw this on this little benchtop Delta bandsaw. I love this thing. I can't say enough about it. Over here, which you can kind of see, this stuff, that's a big 14-inch Rikon. It's a great bandsaw, but I never use it. It's too big. I couldn't make these cuts that I need to make on this thing. And in my small shop, I have to keep it in the corner. If I had a bigger shop, I'd probably have it out and use it more. But I love this little tool. Don't think that it's a toy. I do everything. We're going to build our bridge. We're going to build cut braces. Here I'm going to cut out my necks out of this board on this little bandsaw. I love this tool. Get one. Turning on my vacuum. Here we go. Okay. Okay, kids, there it is. Look at that. There's my tenon. My two outside pieces with roughly 1.5 degrees of an angle. In other words, from here down this way, from here at this one, that's cut in about 1.5 degrees. I'm exaggerating it so that it has a slight tilt when it hits the body, throws the fingerboard up, heads towards the bridge and saddle. So that's going to get glued up just like that. Ultimately, we're going to glue 2 more ears on here to give us the width we need for our headstock, but the rest of this is all well within our parameters. Okay, kids, here is a chop saw that I bought, just an inexpensive one. I don't use it very often, but it does a couple critical things for me. On these 3-piece necks, all right, so there's my tenon, and then these are the 2 cheeks that will sit against the body of the guitar. That's where I want my 1.5 degrees angle on these 2 outside pieces of our 3-piece neck. Now we drew that on there and we cut it with our bandsaw, so we're really close, but I set up this chop saw just to clean that up and give me a nice smooth edge. If I put this in with my straight edge there, then obviously that would be a 90-degree cut along here, 90 degrees there. But I made a shim that fits like so. And now when I put this here, that changes that angle. The shim changes this angle. I'm exaggerating it now, but that just by figuring out what that shim needs to be, I can now chop saw a nice clean 1.5 degrees off of this surface, which is what I want. So again, the angle's going to go, and I'm going to exaggerate this, from this corner this way, not this way. So from that corner down, that's exaggerated, but set up with this shim, I'm going to have 1.5 degrees cut off of this straight edge. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to make this cut. I want to just catch this corner. I don't need to really take anything off of the corner, but just take and line this up to where I'm catching this top corner. I'm sure you can't see the writing, but there it is. That's a nice 1.5 degrees cut. By the way, the middle one of these doesn't need to be cut. Depending on how it ultimately gets glued up, we might cut a little bit of this off. Matter of fact, you don't want your tenon to be bottoming out in your mortise, so oftentimes I'll just take this through my bandsaw and cut a little bit of that off. Again, this, so I don't need any angle on this. This is going to sit in the mortise, not touching anything. It'll just have the 2 bolts coming out of it. So this is not an issue. Again, it might be a little long. Sometimes I have to trim this down depending on how the glue up ultimately ends up. Okay, I'm going to jump right in here. This is my neck gluing up jig. The idea here is to have a flat surface. I'm going to start taking this apart. I've got this bridge that goes over the back side of those 3 pieces, and then there are going to be wedges under there. And I marked how it goes so it always fits on the same. But otherwise, this is a flat surface. I've got masking tape on it to, so the glue ooze doesn't glue to the the board, obviously. Inside of here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a stop right here. So my long piece goes there, stops. These are just 2x4s. This is a flat surface. 2x4s, but I did cut an angle on those, the 1.5 degrees, that's going to correspond with my pieces. So a stop, and these two are stops. So you're going to look like it'll look something like this. That goes in there, and then these two butt up against there. So this is always right where I want it to be. I used to just put this down on a flat surface, can you see that, and put clamps on it. But I found that it would often want to, because of the glue, would want to slide a bit, and it would always end up with a little bit of an angle. It was hard to keep this square this way, 90 degrees. So I made this jig, simple, effective. So now I push my pieces into where they are stopped. Then I'm going to put this piece back on there and run wedges under here to keep them straight down. And then I've got a piece for my headstock that keeps it fairly flat too. So without further ado, here's my bag of wedges that I'll be using. Different size wedges, because these are always all over the place. And here I'm just going to use tight bond to glue this. We're gluing long grain to long grain. No sense having it be anything else but tight bond. I'm making a pencil mark so I remember not to glue out here. I don't want glue on that part. So just lay this out like so and start putting some glue on it. Okay, there's my 3 pieces with glue on them. Next thing I'm going to do is replace this little bridge that goes over those for my wedges. Next I can take a wedge and put it in this center one. I'll make sure those are up against my stops. Then the neat thing here is that this also pushes those in one direction with a wedge. So by putting this wedge in here, you can see the glue ooze starting. So now I'm going to put in a couple more wedges here to hold. So these wedges are holding it down against my flat surface. This wedge squeezes everything that way. And we'll put one more wedgie in here. So now all 3 of those are down. So that keeps it nice and straight for 90 degrees this way. Now we're going to start putting some regular clamps on it. one down in this very first corner here. One up here. Everything's right where I want it to be. Check, check, check. I'll stick another one down here, about like so. Come over here. This one around this way. It's always good to kind of flip your clamps every other direction. I've got this piece which holds these guys together, again just using wedges. So this is gonna keep my face on my headstock in the right direction. So there we go, that helps straighten that all out. You see what I'm doing there? And I'll put one more just for fun. Right there. Alrighty, so there you go. I've got this piece to keep the face of my headstock against a flat surface. And again, that all gets straightened up. It's not critical. Don't worry if these are up or down here, because none of these were cut exactly right. We just ran them through the bandsaw. But we do have flat surfaces where our fingerboard's going to be, and that's straight down onto our jig. So that's a flat surface. Holding those down, this wedge tightens them like a clamp. These three wedges hold those guys straight down onto the flat surface, and then a few clamps at the heel. And again, these are all preset because I've got stops there that show me where those should just sit for my glue up. So there's my neck blank glued up. Fairly quick and easy. In other words, we started with our flat board. We cut out our three pieces according to our template. 3 pieces is all we need. Again, we will come back and put ears here to give us the width we need. And so you cut out your 3 pieces and you glue them up with some kind of jig. You can figure out your own kind of jig. This is mine. It works great. And there you go. There's our neck blank made with our tenon built in. Very cool.
Like a sparrow without a nest, home is once to me.
Okay, kids, if you like and use or find these videos interesting, educational, informative, or maybe just entertaining because you're up late at night, we'd love to have you support us. There's a few ways you can do that. One is click the subscribe button below. That helps YouTube know what we're doing and that we're serious about this. Also, you can hit that bell icon, which tells you when the next videos are coming out. We're going to try and get at least one out a week now that we're up and running here. Also, a good way to support us is become a patron over at our Patreon account. And again, there's a link below for that. Patreon's a cool way that you can sign up and give, you know, $5 a month or $10 or whatever you feel is worth it. If you're using these videos to actually build a guitar and find it interesting and fun, please support us through Patreon. That's you know, I wish I could do this completely for free, but it takes money and time away from my other regular job. So, you know, it's a big undertaking, and any support you could send this way is great. So, you know, it's all been very fun so far for me, and I hope you guys are having fun at this as well, and we greatly appreciate all your support, so thanks.